Wowee, look at that. My first ever Persona 3 video. Oh, I'm sorry. My first ever Persona 3 reload video. Hey everybody, so I apologize for not uploading for a while. Well, one, I just got lazy, and two, it's this game's fault because I've been playing it non-stop for like 2 months and I'm 117 hours in. It's a great game, I definitely understand the hype. There are some things that bother me about it though. For one, the pacing is absolute dog shit, even worse than usual for a Persona game. You can't advance anywhere until a full moon, so if you want to grind XP, you're forced to walk around the same floors of Tartarus over and over again for weeks until a full moon happens and you unlock more areas. It's boring, irritating, and gets tedious after a long time. At least with the palaces in Persona 5, you don't have to wait for new areas to open up. You always have new areas to discover and something new to do. It keeps the game seeming fresh and also keeps you from losing your sanity too much. Another thing that I really don't like about this game is the fact that it's so fucking depressing, and that's not necessarily a bad thing in itself, it's just a bad thing for me, because it's like, I don't want to play a game that is just miserable the entire time. And yeah, the Persona games are pretty dark, don't get me wrong, but I feel like Persona 5 is like lighthearted a solid 60% of the time. But this game is just like depressing almost every fucking day of it. Another thing that I'm probably biased about that I didn't like with this game, and the thing I'm going to be talking about today, is the quote-unquote relationship between these two. And I feel really bad about it because I've seen so many people calling this like a beautiful love story, and meanwhile me over here, I felt absolutely nothing except for anger during these scenes. Before we get into it, I just want to say this is all my opinion. If you think that Junpei and Chidori are a perfect pair and a power couple and I'm just a salty hater, then good for you. This is just my personal opinion, and honestly, I feel bad for being so harsh towards these two because like, it's just a fucking game. Okay, so before I talk about these two as a whole, I'm gonna focus on both characters separately first. The thing with Junpei is overall, I like his character, but after his whole thing with Chidori, I definitely started to like him a lot less. Junpei has his funny moments.
Say, Junpei, what do you do to make yourself feel alive?
I don't know. Breathe, I guess? Man.
He's fun to be around most of the time, his persona is really cool and useful, he's a good friend for the most part, and I find his story to be relatable. The issues I have with him: one, he takes his insecurities out on other people, which yes, I know he apologized for, but it was still shitty. He's old enough to know not to do that. It's one thing to be jealous of someone, and another to treat them like shit when they did nothing wrong to you just because you're jealous of them. And two, he's weird with girls.
That's good. I mean, you have such beautiful hands.
Don't touch me!
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
This is too painful. It used to be fun when you came to visit, but now it's different.
I've seen a lot of people saying Junpei is like the Ryuji of this game, and while they are similar, do not compare my GOAT Ryuji to Junpei, okay? Ryuji has his flaws too, don't get me wrong. He's also kind of weird sometimes with girls and it's kind of annoying, but the thing is, he still remains respectful to An after they become friends, and An willingly puts her hands on him because she's comfortable with Ryuji and knows he won't try anything. An was literally a victim of, and she isn't bothered by Ryuji doing this weird hand gesture.
Got a better opinion of me now? What? Cat got your tongue? Come on.
Are we missing one?
I'm not justifying it, I still thought it was weird, but the fact that she laughed it off, wasn't grossed out, and happily pulled him into a hug shows how much she trusts him and how much they really care about each other. But at least where I'm at in the game, I have never seen a girl from C's willingly put her hands on Junpei. Ryuji can still be weird sometimes, obviously, but I still find him to be far more tolerable than Junpei when it comes to women. The difference I feel like between these two, and why I hate when people say they're like exactly the same, is that Junpei is a lot like Sanji. Both of them think that in order to praise women, they have to put men down, which no. And before you say, oh well, you're just a butthurt man, okay, maybe you're right, but like, I don't understand what this is supposed to prove. Like, the whole point of gender equality is that women and men are equal, not women are above men or men are above women. If you intentionally treat women better than men or vice versa, you're being sexist. Yes, I know these scenes in the games are played off as a joke, but they're there for a reason. Respecting women doesn't mean putting men down. That's why I love Ryuji a lot more and respect him a lot more than I do for Junpei. And also, technically, Junpei isn't really respecting women because he's still weird as fuck towards them. With Chidori, look, I get it, he's young and in love, he doesn't know how to act, but he was still pretty creepy. Like, if I was Chidori, I would be incredibly uncomfortable. Why are you touching me without my permission? And after I kidnap you too. Like, bro, why are you so desperate? Just go home. There's other goth women in the world, okay? I understand that this most likely isn't the case, but it really gives off the vibe that Junpei only cared this much about Chidori because he thought she was initially attractive. Overall, likes character, kinda. Still funny sometimes, but there are some things with his character that are hard for me to get behind, and after this whole arc of Chidori giving up her life for him, it kinda just made him even harder for me to tolerate. Damn, I'm probably being really harsh. I apologize to any Junpei fans, but like, come on. Even if you like him, you do have to admit he has his flaws. Okay, so moving on to Chidori. This is gonna piss off some people, but I don't like her. Sorry, I don't really like Strega in general. For one, I hope Takaya dies a horrible death. Jin is like fine, I guess. He's still fucking evil. The only good thing about him is whenever I see his name, I always think of the BTS member.
Hey, stop it! Stop it! Just stop it! 스펠링 뭐야? S T O P I T. Wow! Yeah!
And Chidori is kind of just, I don't know how to feel about her. The main issue I have with Junpei is that he seems to prioritize Chidori over his team. After this scene, when the game makes you fight Chidori, Junpei is the one bitching and crying, worrying about Chidori instead of his team. When Chidori is literally the one who threatened us in the first place. Like,
Whose side are you on?
you're prioritizing the feelings of a girl that you met a month ago over the group of friends that you've had for multiple months. Let's also not forget the fact that this girl literally kidnapped him and he still went out of his way to visit her and make sure she was okay. I'm sorry, that's simp behavior. That's not being a good, forgiving person. That's not being a gentleman. That's being a simp. Think about it this way. If a man held a woman hostage and then that woman's friends came to rescue her and they restrained the man who kidnapped her and put him in the hospital, and then the woman who was the victim of the kidnapping went to visit her kidnapper, wouldn't people be saying, that's toxic? She doesn't owe him anything after what he did to her. But because it's a dude, it's just him being a gentleman, guys. Like, what? No, I'm not saying that Chidori and Junpei are terrible people, but they have issues, especially Chidori. I understand characters being somewhat rough on the surface to hide that they're softer deep down and whatever, but it doesn't work when you have a character who's made such severe quote-unquote mistakes. Like, you know, kidnapping someone and trying to kill that person's friends. Like, there are some things that just don't deserve to be forgiven. But then Junpei, of course, forgives her anyway. And then they have, like, a tragic love story and whatever. Are we just gonna forget what she did to him? Like, the fact that Junpei was more worried about Chidori than his friends, who she was trying to kill, is so aggravating. That's why I've always hated enemies to lovers. It never works. I understand friendly rivals to lovers, but full-on enemies is 99% of the time toxic as fuck. The only exceptions I would say to this are if somebody was always good, but they were just being controlled and they only fight the main character like once just for self-defense, like with Kakuin and Jotaro. And I don't actually ship them, I was just giving an example. But if you're fully competent and aware of what you're doing, like, why? It's just incredibly frustrating to me. Junpei doesn't owe Chidori anything, and she doesn't owe him anything either. Yes, I guess it was nice that she gave up her life for him. I understand why Chidori cared about him so much. He was probably the first person to show her this kind of kindness, but still their whole love story seems just so forced and rushed as well. Maybe I'm just a heartless bitch because I found it so hard to be, like, very sad at this scene. And the reason why is incredibly stupid and biased, so I'm just gonna get into it so I can explain my train of thoughts. The fact that the game had Junpei and Chidori combine their personas to exist as one is a sweet and neat idea, in theory, but when you think about it, it's kind of insulting. For one, he barely knew Chidori. They had an incredibly rough friendship, and again, she literally kidnapped him and tried to kill his friends. On the other hand, Shinji and Aki were childhood friends. Akihiko was the only person Shinji called by his first name, and the only person Shinji had a nickname for. Shinji was close with Mitsuru as well, but never addressed her by her first name. That shows you how much Shinji cared about Akihiko. Oh, and fun fact, I randomly started calling Akihiko Aki, and then Shinji got introduced and he started calling Akihiko Aki, so I unintentionally made a nickname for Akihiko that was already canon. But okay, anyway, Akihiko was the only person Shinji had a nickname for, and Shinji was the only person Akihiko had a nickname for. They always smile when they talk about each other. Also, in the legit canonic myth that both Akihiko and Shinji's personas are based on are brothers, and share immorality with each other so they can become one. Here is Polydeuces' canonic description in Persona 3 Reload. A hero in Greek mythology as the son of Zeus and the mortal Leda, he inherited his brother's immorality. He and his half-brother Castor were formed fighters and both became stars in the constellation Gemini. As for Castor, a hero in Greek mythology, he is Polydeuces' half-brother, doesn't share his brother's immorality. He was struck and killed by an arrow, after which he and his brother became stars in the constellation Gemini. Polydeuces, also known as Pollux, was the younger twin brother of Castor, and both were known as the Discori or hero twins. Both Castor and Polydeuces had the same mother, Leda, but Polydeuces' father was Zeus, while Castor's father was a mortal man named Tyndareus. Because of this, Castor was mortal, while Polydeuces was immortal. When Castor died, Polydeuces asked Zeus to let him share his own immortality with his twin to keep them together, and they were transformed into the Gemini constellation. So you got the idea. Two brothers, one is immortal, one isn't. One of them dies, the immortal, and asks to share immortality with his brother so they can stay together, and they are transformed together. Yet, when Aki gets his new persona, Caesar, no fusing between Polydeuces and Castor happens? It makes no sense for it not to happen to Aki and Shinji. It literally says in their backstories that the two personas fuse, but they don't do that in the game. But then Junpei and Chidori's do. I'm not saying they have to follow the myth word for word, but having Aki and Shinji's personas fuse, in my opinion, makes so much more sense and would have been a lot more impactful. Shinji was actually our ally, didn't do anything intentionally shitty to the main cast of C's, and in my opinion, I feel like the gang got over his death too quickly. Maybe this is just me being overdramatic and biased because Shinji is my second favorite character, but his death depressed the fuck out of me. I'm not even kidding. I'm not going to get into too much detail in this video because this video is about Chidori and Junpei, but basically, in short, Shinji I absolutely love. He's one of the most relatable characters I've ever seen in a form of media. I think he's adorable and interesting, and I really wish he had more screen time, and his death hit me extra hard even though I knew it was coming. The memorial scene is incredibly sad too because he was so young and one of my favorite characters, and Aki is my favorite character, so seeing him break down in tears like this for Shinji was incredibly heartbreaking as well. I was there crying with him.
Doesn't matter how strong I was. Look what happened.
Akihiko is probably just a far stronger person than I am because he bounced back from Shinji's death incredibly quickly. Bro, you've got to be fucking kidding me. I'm sorry if you can hear my game going on in the background. Literally, right after I made a fucking script about how I feel like Akihiko forgot about Shinji, he has lines where he talks about Shinji. The thing with Akihiko is I think I was being a little too harsh with him. I think I was inserting my own feelings into the game without considering that everybody is different. Akihiko clearly didn't forget about Shinji. Seeing here, you can see how upset he is before he notices the protagonist is watching. So I guess this is made to show that Akihiko is more of a man who prefers to have emotions in private. Again, I apologize for being an emotional snowflake and inserting my feelings into this game. Okay. Anyway, let's get back into it. Anyway, I love Shinji and Aki's relationship. I thought it was adorable, and in my opinion, it makes so much more sense for those personas to fuse over Chidori and Junpei's. Now, Junpei has a piece of Chidori that's a part of him that symbolizes her throughout the entirety of the rest of the game, signifying how important she is, but Shinji literally gets nothing with Akihiko. I just find it incredibly disappointing, saddening, and almost frustrating that Chidori got some kind of memento within this game and Shinji didn't. This might age poorly because I heard Shinji does make a minor appearance in the ending. Don't spoil it please, but that's what I've heard. If Shinji and Aki's personas did fuse, or if they weren't based on this specific legend that states that they do fuse, I don't think I would have been this upset over Chidori and Junpei's personas fusing. At the end of the day, it really just comes down to personal bias and also just a little bit of sadness as well. I talked about my opinions on this with one of my friends, and he said that the reason why Junpei and Chidori's personas fused is because she literally gave him her life energy, which yeah, okay, but the bond that Aki and Shinji shared was so strong that their personas are literally based on two mythical characters that were brothers, and personas are supposed to be a reflection of you. So yeah, overall, I thought that this whole story with Junpei and Chidori was touching and heartfelt, but I'm also just a dick and a terrible person that I wasn't able to feel as bad for these two as I did with Aki and Shinji. That was probably the most aggravating thing about this plotline. At the end of the day, as much as I don't really like Chidori and don't justify anything that she did, she was young and it was sad to see her die, and obviously, yeah, I feel bad bad for Junpei too. Having to live with the fact knowing someone gave up their life for you must be tough, but she still started out as a villain and did some pretty shitty and unforgivable things. Like, imagine what would have happened if Chidori actually won the battle and killed all the C's members. Would Junpei still be like, no Chidori, this isn't you, like, get out? That was probably the other thing that pissed me off the most, the fact that Junpei seemed to be taking Chidori's side over his friends, like, the disrespect. But maybe I'm just overthinking it. Please let me know what you guys think of this scene in the comments. So yeah, that was my first video on Persona 3 Reload. I know probably like none of my subscribers actually like Persona, but I've been meaning to talk about this series for a long time because I really do love it. I have a huge passion for it, and I've really been enjoying Reload for the most part, despite the few issues that I've had with it. I mean, even though I'm talking about how much I don't like this plotline, it was impactful enough for me to talk about it. So that counts for something. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed Persona 3 Reload. Be sure to let me know your guys' thoughts on the game and on this scene in the comments below, and let me know if you have any other video ideas for Reload. Okay, bye and stuff.
Oh, hey. Do you like the, ocean?
Is your question directed at me?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I like the ocean.